As a ghost warrior, an elite sniper, and a highly trained special ops unit, your unique skills in the art of stalking, target detection, surveillance, and shooting accuracy will determine mission success. Welcome to episode 28 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Sniper Ghost Warrior. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. When you first select story mode from the menu of Sniper Ghost Warrior, you will be given 3 options: Ghost Warrior, Unfinished Business, and Challenge. Ghost Warrior contains 16 missions broken into 4 acts, each containing part of the overall story. Basically, the objective is to break down this military regime that has been taking over on this island. To do so, you will eliminate officials, mark plantations for destruction, destroy anti-aircraft weaponry, download data, and more. Several missions will also require you to sneak to a sniper position or to reach an evac location. Unfinished Business follows the same story beats as the main campaign, as your objective is simply to eliminate the next important person, and Challenge follows the same structure still, while completely removing your HUD. In total, there are 20 missions, 16 for Ghost Warrior, 3 for Unfinished Business, and just 1 challenge mission. Before starting your trek through the 20 missions, there is an optional brief tutorial. The tutorial does a solid job of showing you the ropes with some shooting ranges, and more excitingly, you learn the ropes of the stealth by playing some hide and seek. The other major aspect that needs to be pointed out is that throughout these missions you will switch between 3 different characters: Tyler Wells the sniper, O'Neill the spotter, and a member of Delta 3. Each character has a distinct style and unique missions or objectives. Naturally, as the sniper, you will be doing a lot of sneaking and long-range killing, and this is the most played aspect of the game. When you switch to Delta 3, you will be engaged in close-range firefights, just guns blazing the whole time. And finally, as the spotter, you will be marking targets for the sniper, as well as sneaking to separate vantage points to call out said targets. Ultimately, the story is pretty basic and hardly worth discussing, as regardless of the context, you'll just be sneaking around sniping, whether that's a special target or just some enemy soldiers in the way. Something I can always appreciate is when missions tell you not to set off the alarm and actually require you to stay completely hidden or you have to restart, and Sniper Ghost Warrior has a good dose of this. However, my favorite missions typically follow the same structure. This would be when playing as Tyler Wells, the sniper. You would have one of 2 characters acting as your spotter and guiding you through an enemy stronghold, telling you which soldiers to eliminate, when it was safe to move, and planning your route for you. This slow, precise teamwork really hit hard for me. If you're a collectibles guy, there are usually a couple secrets per level, but it's just a laptop with some in-game text you can read from the main menu. I didn't focus on this much. Lastly, I should mention that I played this game on medium difficulty. Sniper Ghost Warrior is a very linear game that leaves little to no room for creativity. Most missions will have you walking down the road with bushes or shrubbery on either side for you to hide in until you come across some ruins or a village. These actual enemy locations usually provide very little room for creativity as well, as you're still just walking through buildings instead of in the grass next to the road. There were a couple missions that had some unique maps, including a lighthouse and an oil rig. However, the oil rig was during a Delta guns blazing mission, so it didn't really add an exciting stealth location, and the lighthouse was more like a 2-level tower that just provided a sniping position. Something else I noticed throughout the game was random rocks or other objects just preventing you from moving forward, which felt really awkward. However, the worst part of this awkward nature was walking up any sort of incline. Trying to walk up the stairs was an absolute nightmare. They're just too steep, and if you weren't walking, but rather crouching, you could get stuck or even end up sliding back down the stairs. Another annoyance I encountered a few times in my playtime was the appearance of random holes or drops in the levels that I fell into and got stuck, forcing me to load a previous save and pray I didn't lose too much progress. I don't mind repeating parts of a mission for dying or screwing up some other way, but for slipping into some weird hole, that just frustrates me. And speaking of frustrations, there were several times throughout this game where it felt like my bullets just disappeared. And from what I could tell, there's just randomly some invisible walls or something that will prevent you from shooting at a certain distance or at certain parts of the missions. It almost felt like leaves of trees would sometimes have a hurt box and block bullets, but I just really don't know what was going on. As mentioned earlier, there are 3 playable characters in this game, and I'm going to cover all of them here. Let's start with the Delta Squad member. As mentioned, the Delta Squad missions all focused on firefights and clearing out enemy soldiers. To accomplish this, there were several different assault rifles you could pick up from the enemies aside from the one you started with. I'm not going to waste time naming them, but what you need to know is that they are all horrible. These guns had a ton of recoil and felt like they did no damage whatsoever. You also started with a pistol, and while this didn't have that crazy kick, it felt like a pea shooter in these missions. The pistol is also featured in the other characters' kits, so I'll come back to it. As Delta Squad, you also had grenades, which were decent enough, and medkits to heal up. Again, this is something available for all characters. Whenever I was playing as Delta Squad, I made it my absolute mission to find the USAS shotgun, which could be found in some buildings and then equipped. This thing was honestly life-changing for these missions. I have never used a shotgun that had 0 kick and just blasted in a straight line. Naturally, as a shotgun, its range wasn't great, but aside from that, this was my beloved in these missions, especially when you consider how bad everything else feels. Let's move on to our spotter. The spotter has a very limited arsenal, including a pistol, binoculars, and a rope. The pistol is much better in stealth sections, as it can one-tap enemies if you shoot them in the head. The binoculars were simply used for marking targets, and honestly, it's a nice change of pace to be able to act as a spotter rather than the sniper. And finally, the rope, which the sniper also has, could be used in select locations to climb up to a vantage point. Finally, the main man himself, Tyler Wells, the sniper. First and foremost, you of course have a sniper rifle. There's a few different snipers varying between semi-automatic, bolt action, and suppressed. Sniping feels pretty good and is leagues ahead of any other gunplay. When aiming with your sniper, there is a red dot which indicates the bullet drop. I like this mechanic, but I swear at times this dot was just wrong. When aiming down sights, you can hold shift to concentrate, which slows down time a bit and helps you line up your shots. This could also be used by the spotter with their binoculars, which is just a little goofy. I can't tell you exactly when it will activate, but for certain shots, a bullet camera will activate and you can follow your shot to the target. This gets a little old to me, but I more so like it to see other enemies in the area and get a feel for my surroundings. As mentioned earlier, the sniper also has medkits, a rope, and I think even grenades. I know for a fact that you will find claymores in C4, but these are more so mission objectives than actual tools to be used in my opinion. In some missions, there will be a mounted minigun that you can hop on and just mow down enemies, and it might be the worst feeling minigun I've ever used. For the general movement, I don't really have complaints. You can crouch, crawl, sprint, and jump with none of it feeling bad, but the melee button in this game is pretty rough. There's also a mini-map which is very useful for tracking enemies in the area, but I'm not sure when an enemy will actually be marked on said mini-map. Sometimes they would appear randomly even when I hadn't seen them, and other times, even if I was staring at an enemy, it wouldn't put them on the map. Lastly, and arguably my favorite, the sniper has throwing knives. These were probably my preferred form of silent kills, as I have always enjoyed throwing knives since my Call of Duty days years and years ago. I will actually come back to the throwing knives in tension, so stay tuned. The only enemies to worry about in this game are soldiers. Some have snipers, while others have assault rifles, but they all act the same. Soldiers don't seem to react to corpses, but if they witness someone die, they will crouch down and be on high alert. I found their detection abilities to be very inconsistent. At times, it felt like they would stare at me and then allow me to just walk into some shrubbery and disappear, and other times they would just flick on you randomly for no apparent reason. I think inconsistent is just the best word for it. Not to mention, these guys have some crazy aimbot, especially in the missions where you play as Delta Squad and its guns blazing. I felt like I couldn't even move a lot of the time and just ended up 1 HP. Something I really enjoyed, however, was the body physics of the soldiers. It was very enjoyable to watch the bullet camera and see their bodies just flip around once dead. I will never complain about somewhat comedic death animations and ragdolls. I also noticed that sometimes after killing a soldier, their dialogue would keep playing. So I'd be standing on top of two talking corpses, and that's at least a little funny. Now I have two very specific complaints I would like to make about the soldiers. This is actually about two separate missions and how the behavior of a soldier completely contradicted the order I was given. In Mission 10, The End is Near, you have to sneak through this camp without being detected. Early on, you will be guided to sneak through this building that has one soldier on the outside by the window, and every time I walked through the door, it didn't matter how quiet I was, this soldier would flick on me and start spraying. I failed so many times, but I had to keep trying to escape this partial soft lock. Even if this soldier didn't kill me, they would set off the alarm, which was a fail regardless. My solution was rather simple. Kill the soldier with a throwing knife through the window before you exit the building, then run like hell and pray they don't set off the alarm before you escape the area. A little ridiculous, but I'll accept the win. The next time I had something similar was on Mission 13, a marksman at his best. In this mission, you play as O'Neill, the spotter, and therefore only have a pistol. Towards the end of the mission, after marking and eliminating the main target, you will run away from soldiers closing in. Then you'll be told that you lost them and had gotten away, which leaves you at a bridge. At the other end of the bridge, there are 4 soldiers, but you are told to sneak down the side into the river to avoid these soldiers. But no matter what I did, once I got to a certain distance, these guys would just start spraying and I had no chance. Yet another potential soft locking situation. My solution was to try to kill them before they could kill me, but all I had was a pistol. So I creeped as close as I possibly could. After realizing that my bullets were disappearing for some reason, then I took out the soldiers one at a time, which only worked because they didn't all react when I killed one. They would just act as if nothing had happened. When this game was tense, it was very tense. But a lot of the time, it just wasn't. And I think that boils down to the mission structure more than anything else. As I said earlier, some missions would have a spotter guiding you, and these missions were pretty damn cool and tense since you were creeping through an enemy stronghold waiting for your orders. The problem is just that a lot of missions are willing to throw away the stealth. There's countless missions where you sit on your sniper perch and just eliminate a bunch of enemies. These levels could be difficult in their own right because of the soldier's aimbot, but at the end of the day, you just gotta keep shooting. There's also the Delta Squad missions that were just so incredibly ass. These aggressive levels, where you're not only running around doing no damage, but also getting hit by every bullet, really made me want to quit at times. I won't deny it. I've mentioned in the past that I don't mind when a stealth game mixes it up and has some levels that aren't stealth focused, but oh my god, these Delta missions are so bad it makes me want to throw away my entire ideology on the matter. I find myself in a weird spot with this game because of everything I just mentioned. When this game is good, I think it's really freaking good, but there's just so much working against it. I'm finding more and more that first-person stealth games really benefit from that extra immersion that the point of view provides. Not being able to see all your surroundings just makes every single move you take all the more risky, and I love that. I cannot tell you how many times I was jump scared. I talked briefly about the throwing knives earlier, and these little blades were just such a delight, especially in terms of tension. Several times, I decided, you know what, let's go throwing knives only for a bit. And this decision always seemed to up the tension for me. No long-range sniper kills to help clear an area. No pistol to provide multiple quick takedowns. Just you and your trusty blades. I really love this playstyle because it felt like screwing up was so much more detrimental to my progression. First of all, you only have so many knives, so you have to collect them from any kill you make. And secondly, if you miss, you're most likely getting turned on immediately. My favorite little screw up from this playstyle was when I killed a soldier in a tower and then climbed the ladder to retrieve my blade. When I turned around, I saw like 10 soldiers standing together and 2 or 3 of them staring in my direction. I pulled out my sniper and just stared back, praying they wouldn't fire. But of course they did. So now I'm prone in this tower, spraying my sniper while 10 soldiers spray back with more reinforcements coming in. A true highlight of the whole game for me, and it was something I caused myself because of my throwing knife addiction. I'm usually not the guy to look on the bright side, but with Sniper Ghost Warrior, even with all its flaws, I can't help but appreciate the peaks of its gameplay. And while I would never ignore the problems I had with this game, they haven't dulled my excitement for experiencing the rest of this franchise.